through the introductory video until then. And I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah, Rohan, it is. But the audio is not, you're not able to hear.
Audio not able to hear?
Yeah, not able to hear.
Okay. That's an issue with then Google Chrome. Or
you have to like share the tab, and while sharing there will be an option at the bottom to enable audio, I think, and work.
yes, I tried doing it. Okay.
होते हैं, पर क्या आपके अंदर वो स्पार्क है जो आपको कामयाबी की ऊंचाइयों तक ले जा सकता है? अगर आप सोच रहे हैं जॉब चेंज करने के लिए लेकिन रेज्यूमे सेलेक्ट नहीं हो रहा, या फिर इंग्लिश में इंटरव्यू देना थोड़ा चैलेंजिंग लग रहा है, तो फिक्र मत कीजिए, यहां हम हैं आपके साथ, आपको सपोर्ट करने के लिए। अपना कम्युनिटी में आपको मिलेगी बेहतरीन कम्युनिटीज जहां आप अपने प्रोफेशनल स्किल्स को सुधार सकते हैं। चाहे आप एक्सेल, टैली, जीएसटी में माहिर बनना चाहें या फिर आप खुद एक ब्यूटिशियन या डिजाइनर हैं, तो यहां आप अपने काम को शोकेस करके दूसरों को टिप्स एंड ट्रिक्स देते हुए आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। अपना कम्युनिटी में आपको मिलेगा मेंटर्स का एक खजाना और बड़े इन्फ्लुएंसर्स का साथ जो आपको हर कदम पर 1-to-1 गाइड करेंगे। यहां आप ज्वाइन कर सकते हैं अपने फील्ड या इंडस्ट्री स्पेसिफिक ग्रुप्स, जहां आपको ऐसे कई लोग मिलेंगे जिनसे सीख के आप वो गलती ना करें जो वो कर चुके हैं। ऐसे लोगों की जिन्होंने स्टार्ट किया था एज एग्जीक्यूटिव्स एंड आर नाउ सक्सेसफुल मैनेजर्स इन देयर डोमेन्स, जो आपको आगे बढ़ाने में मदद करेगा। यहां आपको मिलेगा वो सही डायरेक्शन जो आपकी करियर को नेक्स्ट लेवल ले जाएगा। तो लेट्स अनलॉक योर पोटेंशियल टुगेदर। अपना कम्युनिटी में ज्वाइन करें और अपने सपनों की ऊंचाइयों तक पहुंचने का सफर शुरू करें।
Great. So thanks again. Thank you, everyone. My name is Rohan, one of the co-founders of QFirst, which is a mentorship platform, and we support companies like Apna with the domain expert as required by them. So at Apna, we have been doing this community engagements for quite some time now. It happens on weekdays at 7 p.m. and weekends at 3 p.m. with the main idea of helping people ideate and advance in their professional careers. And we are also covering a wide range of topics. It can be as simple as spoken English, finance, technical, data science, product development, and so on. And we also cover functional skills to help individuals upskill themselves. And today we have Zakiuddin. Hi, Zaki. Hope you're doing well. And he's going to cover the topic of unlock the power of DevOps, accelerating your career in the fast-paced tech world. And a brief introduction about Zaki is he's a DevOps engineer 4 from Amazon, and he's going to take us through the next 40 minutes of the session. Zaki, it's up to you. It's your floor.
Cool. Thanks for the introduction, Rohan. Yeah, is my screen visible?
Yes.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I hope you all are doing great. So myself, Zaki, as Rohan has mentioned, I'm working as a DevOps engineer 4 at Amazon. And in today's webinar or session, we would be mainly discussing about DevOps. So if you are joining this session, what I would think is the main intention over here is that you are trying to find your career option in DevOps and want to know of what is DevOps. There is some disturbance from Sanjay. Yeah, Rohan. So the reason you are joining this session is what I can think of is that you are trying to look your career opportunity into DevOps and trying to get your career over here. So without any further delay, I think we can get started with our session. So my screen is visible, right? Yep. So basically the agenda of this webinar is try to give an overview of what is DevOps. We will try to understand the use of DevOps. What is the term DevOps in terms of the technical world, right? Because when I was trying to join as a DevOps engineer, I was having minimal knowledge about it. So I'll try to give a brief of what is DevOps. And once we understand what is DevOps, we will try to look into what are the core concepts or the principles basing upon which DevOps will be functioning, the tools and technologies which you would be using as a DevOps engineer. If let's say down the lane after 2 to 3 months or 2 to 3 years, you are choosing your career as a DevOps engineer, then what are the tools and technologies which you would be probably using? Because it is a fast-paced world, the technologies may be varying, it may be evolving over time, but there are some kind of common tools and technologies, the common basic concepts which would be seen across the tools. So we will be looking into those. Once we understand what is DevOps and what are the concepts, tools and technologies involved over here, we would be looking into the career paths. So what are the career paths available for a DevOps engineer? Once you have learned, once you have mastered the concepts, once you have understood how to make use of the tools and technologies, what are the career options available for you? So we will be looking into those. And once we identify the career opportunities, we will also try to see how we can upskill ourselves. So how can we learn those technologies? What are the learning opportunities present? And how do we collaborate? All of those. So once we have learned about these things, we will also look into the topic of how can we look as the interviews. Okay, what are the strategies which we need to apply? How do we tailor our resume? What kind of things we can put in our resume so that the chances of our resume getting shortlisted would be increasing. Cool. Is the agenda clear, or anyone is having any doubts on this? Yeah, guys. One request I would make to you all is, please try to like be interactive over here. You can ask as many questions as possible, because the main agenda over here is to give you an overview. And if you're not able to understand any concepts, feel free to speak up in between and share your thoughts. We will try to learn together, and your experiences as well throughout the session. Cool. So that is a simple request from me, to please feel free to ask your questions or share your experiences as required. Cool then. Without any further delay, let's get started. First thing, what is DevOps? What do you guys think is DevOps? Can you guys give your answers? It may be right or wrong. That should be okay. What do you think by the term DevOps? When you hear this word DevOps, right, what comes to your mind? Anyone on the call want to speak up or put it in the chat? I think that should be fine. Whenever you hear the word DevOps, what comes to your mind? I see there are 29 people on the call. Could you please unmute? Yeah, Rohit, you can unmute yourself. Rohit or anyone, you can unmute, you can speak up. Anyone wants to tell what is DevOps? If you're not having any idea, that is also absolutely fine. I think we can go further. What is DevOps? So if we say DevOps, right, it is a kind of cultural shift which mainly emphasizes on collaboration, automation, and continuous delivery. It has been kind of like very revolutionizing in the past. If you see the teams who have adopted this DevOps curriculum, DevOps mindset, have seen a better results in terms of the development deployment cycle. Okay, now when we say that it is a cultural shift that emphasizes mainly on the collaboration part, what do we mean by that? What is the need of DevOps? How did DevOps come into picture? Correct. That is a main question which we would be getting when we are saying that DevOps is a cultural shift which emphasizes mainly on the collaboration, automation, and continuous delivery. What does that mean? Let us try to understand a bit more on that. Cool. So when we say that it is a cultural shift, it means that there is a kind of difference in the mindset. Earlier, how would the deployment and development cycle would happen? In the traditional model, right, there are two types of model which we can think of. One is a traditional model. In this traditional model, right, what actually happens is that there is this developer team who will be mainly responsible for writing the code. And once the code is being written, tested, they will not be handling the deployment part. Deployment part would be done by some ops team. So over here, the ops team will not be having a sync with the developer team. Okay, what are the changes coming in? What is the testing mechanism being done? What all tests were done? Nothing would be there, right? The ops team will not be having any kind of idea on it. The work of ops is just to get the code and deploy it in the production. That can be anything. Production. Yeah, Priya, you have raised your hands. Do you have anything to ask? Feel free to unmute or put your queries, Priya.
Priya, if you have any queries, feel free to unmute. Your hand is raised. And in case if there are no queries, please request you to lower your hand. Okay.
Awesome. So yeah, continuing from here. So in the traditional model, as we know, right, that developers would be writing the code, they would be handing over that code to the ops team. Now, in this case, there are a lot of issues because there is no collaboration. There is no sync between the developer team and the ops team on what are the changes going in. How are those changes, like whether are the changes safe for the production or not. So there are a lot of confusion. If we imagine a kind of example, right, wherein let's say there is an e-commerce application. Okay, one e-commerce application which we can think of is Amazon or Flipkart. Let us take an example of that. So there will be a lot of features, a lot of changes being made on a daily basis or on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis. There will be some sort of cycle in which changes would be going in to that application. Now, whenever those changes gets completed, right, whenever the developer completes their part on developing that feature or fixing that bug or whatever the enhancement would be there, when they are done with their part, now comes the main next thing. That is the most important thing. If you have developed a feature or done some feature enhancement, you that is of no use until and unless that is being delivered to the customer or your end user. So your main priority would be on how do you ensure that safely those changes are being moved to the customer. So what you do is you will be just giving that to the ops team. Now ops team would be deploying those changes. After deploying, there can be a lot of issues which can occur. That is, some sort of configuration mistakes can happen, some sort of testing related things, some sort of performance issues. A lot of issues can come in. So over there, if they are not having this collaborative environment being set up, in such cases, what happens is the blame game would go on. That is, people will try to say, ki, it is your issue, that it is your mistake, it is not my mistake, and all of those things will be happening. With that, there are a lot of drawbacks. That is, your deployment time would be increasing. You will not be able to deliver to your customer on time. Okay, you'll not be able to meet your customers' demands and all of those. So there are a lot of issues which people have observed. So keeping those in mind and realizing from the mistakes, they have came up with one mindset, which is that now developer and ops, these two teams will not be working as a separate thing. Let us bring a cultural shift over here. Let us bring a change in the mindset and let them work in the collaborative manner. So that's where the term DevOps came in. Over here, if you see in the DevOps model, what happens is the collaborative mindset would be coming up. Okay, and we will be having continuous integration and CI/CD pipelines. So there are these things which I put up over here: monitoring and logging and working together. Now, what does these mean? When we say that we are having this collaborative mindset, continuous integration and delivery, CI/CD pipeline, when we talk about monitoring and logging, and also we say that working together to quickly identify and resolve problems, leverage DevOps strategies. So what do we actually mean by this, right? When we are saying that this is a collaborative environment, what does that collaborative environment mean? Okay, so how do we ensure that there is a collaboration being going on whenever you're trying to work with the development or ops team? Over here, a kind of ownership model would be being established. That is, the development team would be getting to know, okay, these are the things which I should be taking a complete ownership of. And the ops team, okay, over here, they will be coming up with these sort of things that our responsibilities are over here. We would be having a shared ownership. Now, we will not be playing the blame game over here. Instead, we will be going with a collaborative mindset, because at the end, we want our feature or the enhancement, whatever we did, our changes, whatever we made into our application. The main intention is that those should be delivered to the customer with a seamless manner. Yeah, Ashim, I see that you have raised your hand. Do you have anything to ask? If not, I think you can, yes, you can lower your hand. If you're having any doubts, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask. No, I think no doubts. Let's continue. So one thing is that there would be multiple teams associated. Okay. Whenever you are trying to work, what Anjali is asking a doubt. What do you mean by release in various stages? That's a really good doubt, Anjali. We'll come to that as well. Okay, we'll discuss about it. Firstly, we'll talk about what is this DevOps mindset. In that, we will also be covering about release in the various stages. Cool. So when we talk about this thing, right, collaborative thing, after collaboration, we'll talk about the release part. Okay, during this collaboration, we should be working. So you should be aware that whenever you're trying to work in the development, like in the tech industry, you would be collaborating with multiple people, not just single team. You'll be collaborating with multiple teams over here to gather the requirements, to gather the details on the testing part, and you will be going through that entire development life cycle. That is, firstly, you will be planning what all changes would be going in. You will be talking about the coding part. The code would be done, and now once the coding is done, you will be building those changes. Building in the sense is, how do you want your code to be going into the pipeline? So if I talk about pipeline, you guys might think, what is a pipeline over here? So as a DevOps engineer, you would be hearing this term pipeline very often. So if I just give you a simple example of what is a pipeline, you have pipeline setups being done at your home, right? Wherein you will be having a tank at the top of the floor, then there will be pipeline which would be connecting to your rooms and everywhere, wherever you want the tap. So over here, the water would be flowing continuously. So that's the same thing, similar kind of thing, which we will be talking about in terms of DevOps. When we say pipeline, over here, we mean that the changes should be flowing seamlessly. The way water flows in the pipeline seamlessly without any issues, we want similarly those changes, whatever we do in our application, to be flowing seamlessly to the end user. So that's the main reason behind the pipeline. And in this pipeline, we will be having multiple stages being put up, wherein we will be doing some sort of testing. Some sort of workflows will be running up. Example, in your home, you're having a tank, you're having the pipeline being set up. And if you want to make use of that water for drinking purpose, will you be drinking it directly? Will you be drinking it directly? I want you guys to provide your answers. You can type or you can speak up. That should be fine. You guys you will not be drinking it directly, right? Correct. So over here, you will be having one stage. That is, you'll be bringing up some sort of RO. Filtration would be there, wherein you will be putting that filter, and that filter will be responsible for checking the purity of that water. And once everything is done, like the purity check and all of those, whatever filtration process would be there, once that is being completed, the water, you can enable the tap, you can open the tap, and you can drink that water. So similarly, in the pipeline, right, when we talk about the pipeline, the changes do not come to the customer directly, because if you, whatever change you make, you allow that change to go to the customer or to the end user directly, there are a lot of issues. There is a lot of risk involved over here. Not issues, there is a lot of risk, because the changes which you make may or may not be safe for the production. They may enhance a user's experience, or they may disrupt the user's experience. So there can be a lot of issues over here. So to avoid those things, right, we will be dividing our pipeline, like we will be putting multiple stages in our pipeline, wherein your changes will be staying for some duration of time. And over there, at that particular stage, you will be applying some sort of workflows. That is where this testing comes in. The changes will be getting built, and they will be flowing through the pipeline, and they will be stopping at some stages. Whenever they stop at any stage, they can be gamma stage, beta stage, test suite stage. These are like environments wherein the developers can test their code. So in that testing stage, there will be multiple workflows being running up, and those workflows can be checks related to security issues, whether the code changes you are making are having any security vulnerabilities or not. You will be having a check on that. And similarly, you will be checking whether your code is for that. We are having tools available. How do we check the security? There are tools available. There are tools such as 45 scanner. You can look about it. You can read about it. Okay, that is useful for checking the security vulnerabilities. Similarly, you would be having a check on whether the code you have written is following proper coding standards or not, whether you are missing anything in your code, whether the code is written properly, the structure is proper or not. You are having tools available for checking that, SonarQube is there. And similarly, you will be checking whether the changes you have made are correct or not by applying unit test. Unit test in the sense, you will be checking individually the components in your application, those tests will be written in that approval workflow. Okay, unit test would be there, wherein each and individual component would be tested. And then similarly, you will be having integration test, wherein the components, when they are clubbed together, when those components interact with each other, what is the behavior, whether that is the expected behavior or is there anything anomaly observed over here. And similarly, you have regression test and all of those. So once all of this testing gets completed, once you verify, automatically there are like automatic workflows, automatic approval and manual approval. So if you are having all of this test being put up in your pipeline, you can enable the automatic promotions. Automatic promotion in the sense, we have discussed, right, that your changes would be staged at a particular stage, let that be gamma, beta, or test suite, whatever that can be. Once they are staged at a particular place, if we are having this test for being added, those tests get passed by. Automatically the code changes would be flowing. If you are putting manual approval flow, a manual workflow, right, manual approval, over there you will be testing those changes manually. Once that changes are verified, you will be approving that. So once we approve it, it would be going to the next stage. And similarly, those stages would be like the changes would be flowing through the stages. And then at last, we will be having your one box or production stage. One box in the sense, as per best practices. When we talked about DevOps, right? DevOps is all about following best practices for deployment, development. Okay. So over here, we would be following some sort of best practices for setting up the whole pipeline. That is, we will not be we are sure that our testing got verified and everything, but still there can be some kind of common like corner cases which can be missed out. So and that corner case, if we miss it out, right, and that gets directly deployed to the customer, it can cause some sort of issue. You can think about the recent global outage which was caused by CloudStrike, right? Over there, I think if we would have deployed those changes in an incremental manner to the users, if let's say firstly we would have deployed it to the 5% of user base, and then 10%, then 20%, then 50, then 100, over there the blast radius would be a bit less. So over here you would be putting all of the strategies and setting up the pipeline key. How do you want your changes to go to the customer? Firstly, one box stage would be there. This is a part of production wherein you would be deploying only a part of your feature. Like your feature would be available to only part of users. Only some part of users will be able to use that. And once that is being used, you will be continuously monitoring those. That is where your operating and monitoring would be coming up. You will be monitoring that changes for some duration of time. There will be some baking period for which you will be monitoring the changes, whether you are observing any sort of errors, whether the latency got increased or any CPU utilization, memory issues, any sort of issues are occurring or not. You will be verifying and monitoring for some hours. After that is verified, you will be moving into the production stage and the complete changes would be going up over here. So this is the overall flow which happens, and this happens in a collaborative manner. That is the developers and the ops people. That is the DevOps. Over here comes the main thing, that collaborative environment would be coming up, and incrementally those changes would be deployed. So when we talk about release, I think someone asked about release. What is release? So release is all about making sure that the changes which you have made are available to the end customer or your end users. So that is the release thing. And this is how the collaboration would be going on. Now we talked about multiple things over here, right? That we will be building the pipeline, we will be testing, we will be deploying, we will be monitoring. So to do all of these things, we may be requiring some sort of tools. Doing that release same as deployment, Debajyoti, not necessarily. Release deployment is something which you can do in your stages. Release is nothing but the final release which the user will be able to access. That is a release. And deployment, it can happen at any environment. That can be your gamma environment, your test suite environment, whatever environment. Environment in the sense the stage which I'm talking about, right? So that stage, I'm referring it as environment. Okay. So deployments can happen, but every deployment is not a release. Is that clear, Debajyoti? It is not same. Every release is not a deployment, but every yeah. Is it clear, Debajyoti? Awesome. Now we talked about multiple things over here. We talked about pipeline. We talked about collaborative environment. We talked about how to make monitoring and all of those. Correct. So now let us see how does that happen. Okay, how does that happen? In order to in order to do those things, DevOps people would be requiring some sort of tools. So what are the tools? So the tools being used are for the version control system. Mainly thing is a version control system. We also have continuous integration, CI/CD pipeline, and we have containerization techniques, Docker. We'll learn more in detail about those things going forward. I'm just giving you overview of what are the tools. We use containerization techniques. We also have configuration management. Configuration management in the sense, how do you want your pipeline to be configured? How do you want the infrastructure to be looking like? Okay, and then we have monitoring and logging tools. So these are the tools, like mainly famous tools. They are well-known tools, which are Prometheus, Grafana, ELK. ELK is nothing but Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. These are mainly used for storing the logs. And we have AWS cloud, cloud platforms. Example, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, wherein you can deploy your changes. These are the tools in overall, overview. Let us look into bit detail on what are these. First comes the version control. Like, what is the use of this version control system? I think you guys may be aware of what is a Git. Git is a kind of version control system which allows multiple people to work on the same repository. Same repository in the sense, same code base simultaneously without causing any issues over here. And there are multiple features in this Git. That is, you can create, if let's say you are having a code repository being created, you can have multiple branches to that code repository. There can be there will be one mainline branch and which will be used for deployment. So that mainline branch, when we talked about the pipeline structure, right? So whenever you make any changes, they should be flowing through the pipeline. So what changes should be monitored? Only one branch. So you will be putting your code at the source place, right? There will be one source wherein your code would be placed. It will be having Git being enabled. Version control system would be enabled. It will be having multiple branches, and there will be one mainline branch. And apart from that, everything would be test branches. You can create as per your wish. The developers would be creating multiple branches, and once their changes are being verified, they will be merging it to the mainline branch. And mainline branch would be the one to which the pipeline would be listening to. Whenever any changes gets pushed to the mainline branch, over here, pushed in the sense, whenever you make any changes and commit them, you might be heard about GitHub, right? You commit the changes. Whatever changes you make, you commit them and you push them once they are verified. So the pipeline will be listening to a mainline branch, and from there, all the code flows would be happening. The use of Git. Now you guys might be asking, how is this useful? So whenever we make any changes, it is not necessary that whatever change we make may be correct, right? We should be having some sort of mechanism wherein we can roll back to our changes. The older changes may be the stable ones. So if you want to go back to the stable thing, that is where version control system would be helping us. It will help us to go back to the older changes on a stable state. So, and it will be keeping a track of whatever changes we made. Our history would be tracked with this version control system, and this will be very much useful. And after this, there is this CI/CD pipeline. When you talk about DevOps, CI/CD pipeline would be very commonly heard. So we talked about pipeline, right? So to create that pipeline, there are multiple tools available. Some commonly known tools are Jenkins, Travis CI, and Circle CI. CI in the sense continuous integration. That is, whenever any changes are made to your code repository on a particular main branch, right? It would be integrated. Your pipeline would be integrated with that main branch. And whenever you make any changes to that, it would be continuously flowing through the pipeline until there is no stoppage in between. There is no stage in between. The changes would be flowing through. So for that to happen, we would need to integrate our GitHub repository or wherever we would be putting our source code. It can be GitHub, it can be GitLab, wherever, right? So from there, we want that to be integrated to a pipeline. So to do that, to enable that part, we will be making use of CI/CD tools. They are like Jenkins. Okay, these are having common use case only. All of them. You can go through these after the session. And once these changes are getting flown through the pipeline, over here, you might have heard about Docker. So Docker is a kind of open source platform which is mainly used for containerization. So far, like anyone is having any doubts? I think after that we can continue. If anyone is having any doubts, please feel free to ask. Is the thing whatever I have said, whatever we have discussed, clear to everyone? If anyone is having any doubt, please feel free to ask. Anjali is asking, how are they connected to each other? What, Anjali, what are you asking about? Which connection are you asking about? You can unmute yourself and ask the query.
I'm asking that, like in the pipeline, suppose like we are writing the code and pushing to GitHub, and then here we are using Docker or Kubernetes. So how we are connecting?
So it is not necessary that Docker would be used. Docker is a kind of like optional thing. Docker and Kubernetes, these are optional. We mainly use because I think there is a great saying, right? If it works on my system, then it doesn't have to be working on your system as well. I think there is a saying which you might have heard a lot of times whenever you work upon something. You might see that the changes are working on your local machine, but when you make those changes or when you deploy those changes to the production, they may not be working. The performance or the uh, expected behavior would be varying over there. So in such cases, Docker would be very much useful. Docker is something wherein you would be containerizing. That is, some whatever changes you make, right? They may be dependent upon some local software files. Example, if you are trying to run a Python program on a machine which doesn't have Python interpreter being installed, will that program be running?
No.
No, right? And if similarly, if you try to run any other program, let's say Java program on machine wherein Python is installed, that will also not work. So in such cases, wherein your application is dependent upon your some sort of softwares to be installed, prerequisite, okay, some sort of interpreters, some sort of compilers are to be installed in your application. That depends upon your application's use case, okay. In such cases, you will be going for this Docker thing, wherein you will be having an image being created. That image will be used as a kind of base, wherein you will be deploying a source code, and that source code will try to use a file, whatever image file you have created, right? That will be used. So
Okay.
Docker is kind of optional thing. It is not necessary, but yeah, CI/CD is required. It will be listening, that pipeline will be listening to your main branch, and from there the changes will be flowing. If you want your software files to be coming up, wherein over there you can create a Docker image and you can work from there. Got it?
Yes.
Awesome. And similarly, Kubernetes is also like used for scaling, automatic scaling and deployment. So scaling is nothing but, if let's say you know how much capacity, what is your capacity of your host, that it can handle some XYZ amount of traffic. And if that traffic gets increased, you would be requiring more number of hosts. Or once the traffic gets reduced, you would be requiring like lesser number of hosts. So managing all of these changes manually would be very difficult. So over there, Kubernetes will be helpful. It will be useful in scaling of the application, creating the clusters and all of those. I think in detail there will be like you can go through this. I'll just provide an overview over here. Cool. And similarly, we have talked about pipeline, and we've talked about Docker. Now comes the configuration thing. That is, how do we configure over here the complete infrastructure part? How do we configure that? Over there are configuration management tools which comes in. The main commonly like used configuration tools are Ansible, Puppet, Chef. So for Ansible, right, we will have different kind of syntax. Like we would be going with a YAML configuration. Yeah, I see Habib has raised his hand. Yeah, Habib, you have anything?
What's the main source of CA Jenkins?
Sorry, can you come again?
What's the main source of Jenkins?
Main source of Jenkins. So you will be, when you open,
Yeah.
like when you register your account on Jenkins, I think you once you install Jenkins and register over there, you can try to connect it with your GitHub. So you will be having your source code being deployed at a centralized code base. That can be GitHub, GitLab, or anything. Correct? You agree on that part?
Yeah.
In your code repository, there will be multiple branches.
Yes. Okay.
You will be configuring your CI pipeline in such a way on the Jenkins. You will be having that option to configure your pipeline. Over there, you will be configuring that in such a way that it will be listening only to a particular branch. Firstly, you will be like trying to authorize over here, authorization, authentication, everything would be done. Okay. Once that step is completed, you will be providing this configuration over here on which branch. If let's say you would be pushing your changes, you are aware of how to push the changes in GitHub. You are aware about it.
Simply we have to build that
Ah,
user. Yeah.
you just make some changes. If you are trying to build it in separate branch, you will be get checkout -b new branch name, and you'll be going back to your main line branch and you'll be pushing your changes once they are verified and all of those. So in Jenkins, you will be doing that configuration on which branch to listen to. If let's say, because Jenkins is all about continuous integration, the integration should happen continuously. Whatever changes gets pushed to a particular branch of a code repository, they should be getting flown through the pipeline. That is something Jenkins handle. Understood that? Did I answer your query, Habib?
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's go further. Now we have talked about the configuration part as well. Now let us see monitoring and logging. What is the use of monitoring and logging? Correct. So imagine a scenario wherein you have developed some feature and you have like you are completely okay. Yeah, I have developed something and you have deployed it. It is your night time. So you have deployed everything and you have gone to sleep. Now in the morning, you see that people have started to complain that when you have deployed the changes are working absolutely fine. But after some duration of time, wherein you were not monitoring those changes, you were not monitoring the traffic, you were not looking into what requests are coming in, you were not looking into who are your users. In such cases, right, it is very difficult for you to keep a track. How many requests got successful, how many failures did you receive, and what is the latency, what is the issue, what are the issues, how did your infrastructure perform, whether the CPU utilization got increased, whether the latency got increased, whether the what did we say, host memory got increased. So you don't have anything over here. Correct. We want these things to be monitored very carefully. Are like, is monitoring these things required, essential? Like, do we need to monitor on the error rate, how many requests are getting successful, how many requests are getting failed, what is our latency, how is our infrastructure being performing? Is monitoring these services necessary? What do you guys think?
Zaki, sorry to interrupt. This is Rohan here.
Yeah,
I will be logging off, and once you're done, you can just close the session. I've sent the feedback link and feedback link on the chat box. You can just close the session once you're done. Just end it for all.
Sure, Rohan. Yeah, thanks. Cool. Yeah, continuing. So, do you guys think monitoring these metrics is required? Is it essential to monitor these metrics? Yes, correct. Because we should know how our application is running. Correct. How our application is functional. How is it responding to the user's queries? Whether it's able to answer the queries, whether it's able to meet the needs of our customer. So we should be aware of all of this. And if let's say there is no monitoring mechanism being put up and some issue got occurred, okay, over there you will not be having any sort of what do we call mechanism to look into what caused that issue, when was the issue occurring. Correct. So to avoid all of such scenarios, we will be making use of monitoring and logging tools. So commonly known monitoring tools are Prometheus. It monitors your it is a kind of client which you will be installing on your local machine, and it will be emitting the metrics. Metrics can be CPU utilization, it can be latency. There are like some pre-built metrics which will be emitted, and there are like they are default metrics, and there can be some custom metrics which you can emit from your application, and those metrics will be emitted to a particular Prometheus server. And from there, if you want to create visualizations on that, if you want to analyze in a graphical manner, okay, how are those metrics trending, how many errors, how many failures, what is the latency, all of those time series graph, right? You can check that with Grafana. You can integrate Prometheus with Grafana, and you can create multiple dashboards over here. And then talking next, we have Elasticsearch or Kibana. Over here, we also know, do you guys know what is a log? In simple terms, if I say log is a kind of history of your request. Whenever any request comes into your application, you will be printing at each stage what happened. How did your request work? Whether it was a successful, whether it was a failure. If it is a failure, what is the reason? You will be logging all of this. Logging is nothing but the print statement which you generally put. So you will be logging these things, and that changes whatever you would be logging. They would be stored in a log file, and that log file would be stored in a log stash. And from that log stash, you can put it up in the Kibana and you can do your data analysis. So this is a kind of commonly used tool. And cloud platform, this is like something which you should be aware of, that whatever changes we make, I think right now we are mainly deploying those changes on cloud, and most commonly known cloud platforms are AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. Yeah, so that's it. And if we see how would the typical workflow look like in terms of the DevOps technology, DevOps methodology, right? Over here, the developers would be committing the code changes to a Git repository, and CI/CD tool like Jenkins would be detecting the changes and trigger a build and test process. Once that test process is completed, if you are having Docker being put up, then those images would be created. Your changes would be containerized, and then it would be moving further. And yeah, Kubernetes would be dealing with the scaling part. And after that, you will also be looking into the if for configuration, right? Configuration management. You will go with Ansible, Terraform, and yeah, at last Prometheus and Grafana, which will be useful for monitoring your applications. So is the flow clear till here? Is anyone having any doubts? Awesome. No doubts from anyone? Is it clear for everyone? I hope that with this, you got an idea on what DevOps is. What does a DevOps engineer do in general? Cool. Is it clear? Guys, yeah, feel free to respond. If you are aware about, like, if you got some insights on it, please respond. If not, please respond. That should also be fine. Cool. Once we have got to know about this typical workflow, right? Let us see. Now we got to know what is DevOps in general, right? Let us see what are the career opportunities available. If you learned all of this, like if you got a good understanding of all the tools and technologies, the strategies which we have discussed so far, what are the opportunities, career opportunities available for you? So you can become a DevOps engineer, you can become a site reliable engineer, you can become a cloud engineer, automation engineer, DevSecOps engineer, DevOps consultant, and all of this. So the roles and responsibilities would be differing over here. As a DevOps, you will be having some set of roles. For a site reliable engineer, you will be having some set of roles. For a cloud engineer, some set of roles and responsibilities would be there. Like they would be mainly dealing with managing the cloud related things, infrastructure part, whether the scaling is working properly or not, whether the configurations are done properly or not, whether the infrastructure which we are using, which we are utilizing, whether that is that is meeting our standards or not, meeting our requirements or not. And then DevSecOps, wherein you will be checking with the security on the mainly on the security part, whether the code changes being made, that's secured or not. You'll be using your tools and technologies and strategies in those terms. You'll be mainly looking the security thing, whether there are any vulnerabilities. You'll try to develop some automations to detect the vulnerabilities automatically. Okay. And a consultant and architect, wherein you will be guiding people, you'll be guiding startups or bigger organizations on how can they be deploying their code changes in a seamless manner. So there are n number of opportunities. Now comes key, for these opportunities, how can I upskill? So there are online courses available on Udemy, Coursera, and edX. So if you go through those, there are a lot of what do we say, courses available. You can get them and you can learn about DevOps technologies. It will be mainly on these terms, whatever we have discussed. And after you learn that, they also provide some sort of certifications. So you can do that certification. Example, AWS certified DevOps engineer. That is a kind of very useful certificate, kind of very good certificate to put on your resume. It would be covering a lot of core concepts. So once you get familiar with those core concepts, you can apply for that certification and get it. And apart from that, I would highly recommend to work upon projects and labs. So build your personal projects. try to have this complete capstone project being developed. We discussed about pipelines, right? CI/CD pipelines, Jenkins, mission, and all of those. Yeah, Habib.
Any idea about any suggestion for the hand and project labs? Sir?
Sorry, can you come again?
Can you suggest me for the sites of hand practicing
Sure.
website?
Yeah, there are a lot of websites available. I'll share you those as well. So firstly, like come up with some idea. It can share you a guide as well. Okay. You might have pushed your code changes. I think so far you have created some sort of personal project, right, on GitHub. Did you create any personal project on GitHub?
Yeah.
So that is a main firstly primary thing. Now once you have done that, you can go for Jenkins. You can look into how to integrate your code repository with Jenkins. With that, you will be able to get a pipeline being created. Your continuous integration part would be done. For now, what you can do is don't think about the other stages, whatever I talked about. Just have that stage being done and create a prod stage directly. Okay, from there you can see, you can make any changes in your code and see whether those changes are getting released to the production or not. So you can take simple example. This is mainly for learning the concepts, right? You can create that configuration. For that, I think there is this site. I'll check and I'll provide it. Okay, wherein you can participate into DevOps coding hackathons. There will also be a lot of hackathons being coming up. You can participate into those, and you can contribute to open source. So all of these Prometheus, Grafana, these are open source tools, right? So you can also contribute over there. With that, you can get hands-on experience. And when talking about books, there is this book which is like very widely known and like recommended by most of the people, which is the DevOps Handbook. I can provide the title as well over here. Let me just put it. So this is like very widely used DevOps Handbook by Jeannie Kim. Sorry if I'm not spelling it properly, and the Phoenix project. So if you read these books, you'll be getting a idea on how did this methodology, how did this change in the mindset come in, how did we derive that this mindset should be changed. These are the strategies which we should follow. This is how we should create a pipeline. This is how we should ensure the changes are safe for production or not. There are a lot of such scenarios being mentioned in this book. You can go through that, and you can look into conferences and meetups. So there is this site, meetup.com, wherein you can go and connect with people, group of people. You can, wherein like DevOps communities, there are a lot of communities available. You can go over there and you can learn from there. Along with that, there is this Reddit groups. So if you go to Reddit, I'll just provide these. There is this site, devops.com. You guys have Slack. Like these are like very good collaborative platforms. DevOps meetup, DevOps Discord server, DevOps groups on LinkedIn. I'll provide this complete list. So with this, right, you will be getting a lot of insights. Let me just put all of this to you over here. Try to meet with like-minded people. With that, you'll be getting a good idea on what is DevOps, what are the trending technologies, tech stack, and what are the new tools coming up in the market, all of these things. So it will be like better to meet with like-minded people in such cases, right? You will be learning a lot more about it. And mentorship, then comes the mentorship thing. Try to like find out DevOps professionals. You can connect with people on LinkedIn. There are people who are ready to help you out if you are stuck up. There are communities forums, like for example devops.com, wherein you can put your queries, you can check with people. I have put all of those forums, whatever are available over here. You can connect with them, you can post your queries, you can discuss with them. Okay, with that you can foster a collaborative environment. You'll be getting that practice. So over here you can check, and there are other mentorship programs also available. You can look into it. And yeah, the main thing is like continuous learning. It is never the case that I learned a lot. There should not be such scenario. You should always be open to learn something new each and every day, because with that mindset only you will be able to survive in any sort of industry, not just DevOps, in any sort of tech industry, right? If you have this mindset of continuously learning and staying up to date with the latest trends, and also DevOps is all about best practices to be followed. To be frank, right? DevOps is all about best practices. What is the best which we can do so that the changes whatever we make are safe and safely delivered to the end customer. So what are the best practices being coming up? You can read the multiple posts, right? You can read about some sort of outages. What were the outages which have occurred? What are the kind of common issues? You can go to the company's websites wherein they would be putting engineering blogs. You can go and read through them. See what was the issue, how was that being identified. If they have found some issues related to infrastructure, let's say CPU utilizations were increasing drastically, or some sort of memory issues are occurring. So in such cases, what was the mitigation they have done? How did they approach toward that problem? They would be documenting each and everything in their engineering blogs. You can go through them and read. That will be giving a lot of insights. So yeah, that's all about the upskilling. But anyone having any doubts on that? Any doubts on that? Sometimes tools like Circle C are in maintenance mode. In such cases, how do we release? Over there, we are having a like hard dependency. I think in such cases, our deployments would be paused, Jatin. We should try to look into the tools. I think Travis CI is good, and Jenkins is also good. I have become, but I want to make developer. Yeah, Sanjit, it is. If you want, like tech industry is very wide enough. So if you are having that will to learn something, if you are able to create some projects on your own, because you're not having that computer science background, right? So if you are able to create, build some projects with your own concepts, you can like join any course, like any kind of online courses which can provide you details on how to become a developer. What are the prerequisites? Like coding is a must, correct? So how do you learn coding? How do you learn data structures and algorithms? How does development happen? How does deployment happen? So once you learn all of these things and you're able to create some values out of that, if you're able to create some kind of projects and showcase it on your resume, and you're able to speak up about it, you can land as a developer, Sanjit. So for learning thing, you can go to Udemy and you can search for courses. They are very cheaply available on Udemy. You can get for very less price. I think 400 to 500. You can find any good courses over there. And yeah, main thing is you should go with a consistency. You should have that mindset if you want to land into the developer job, right? You should have that mindset being set up, and you should continuously work upon that. Consistency should be there. If you are willing to put your everything, right, in such cases it will be easy for you. And if you are trying to look what all places I can learn, I would just recommend get started. Until and unless you get started, you will not get to know what you are supposed to do. Once you get started, you can see n number of ways available. Think are not just developer, you can look into cloud architect or what else you can become. So it is just that you should get started, that's it. And the way would be opening. Cool. Think now we can go with the interview preparation and job search. How do we do that? Okay. First and foremost thing is resume and cover letter, which most of you are aware of, correct? What is a resume? In your resume, what should you put and what you should not put? Main thing is you should highlight whatever skills are required for a particular job role. In our case, if we are looking for a DevOps job, so over here, what are the key skills and experiences required for a DevOps? Mainly the pipeline creation, the best practices, the development, deployment. All of these are key skills, correct? These should be highlighted in your resume. And in your resume, you should also use relevant keywords. Example, what are the contributions you have made to a particular project as a DevOps? What was the impact of that particular contribution? How did it help the org? How did it help the community overall? How did that contribution help the user base? Did it help in avoiding some sort of potential issues? Did your contribution help in enhancing that performance, or whatever that be, right? Put it clearly over there and use relevant keywords. You can find those keywords in the job description, and accordingly you can put them in the resume. Once you have created your resume, you need to like focus upon your interview preparation. How do you do that? You can look into what are the common types of questions being asked for a particular job role, whether that is developer, DevOps, full stack, front end, back end, whatever that can be, right? You can familiarize yourself with the questions being asked. You can look into those and you will find it. and you can try to practice how do you answer those technical questions, and what are the tools and technologies which you should be using. And along with that, we should be mainly focusing on the problem solving capability. Yeah, how do you solve the problems and how do you collaborate over here? Hmm, resume, think I don't have it handy, Habib. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I can share you some like resumes. You can also search in the Google. With some, there will be some sort of keywords using which you can find the resumes which people have applied. Okay, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I can share it to you. And then we would be like, main thing is now interview preparation part is done. Now comes the main part, which is how do you showcase your skill. Interview preparation done, you got the interview chance, how do you showcase it? This is, yeah, she wants. What is your query? Cool. If nothing, I think we can continue. So next comes your how do you showcase your skills? Main thing which we talked about, right? If you're already having a personal project being developed, now it is more of enhancing your skills and showcasing them in terms of a DevOps. For that, what are the things required? Pipeline, that is something which is required. Continuous integration, continuous deployments, wherein some tests are to be written. If you are not having any unit test, integration test, or any sort of test being written, have them. It is a good time to have those tests being written. And once the tests are being written, then comes the logging part. How do you log the things, Prometheus and Grafana? How do you monitor the changes? So you can implement these things, these tech stack in your personal project. With that, you can build your own portfolio. Okay, that portfolio will be built, and you can showcase about that in your personal websites. Along with that, you can participate in open source projects, contribute to DevOps community, and all of this. And once you are done with showcasing your skills, you have created your own personal project, okay, with containing all the complete flow, pipeline, monitoring, and everything is being covered over there. Now you can leverage the job searching portals. There are a lot of portals available, Naukri.com, LinkedIn, and a lot of such portals. You can go over there and look for the DevOps related jobs or whatever job you're searching for. And also along with that, you can try to reach out to your network. If you're having LinkedIn, you can try to reach out to your LinkedIn connections. And in that, you should not just go with the key refer me or something. Try to showcase your skills. Try to sell yourself over there. If you are asking them to refer you, why should they refer you? What is the reason? What is the skill set which you are bringing through? Correct? What is the enhancement or what is the use which you would be bringing in? So that is something which you should be ready with. And once you are having those things being ready, right, handy, you can ask people for referral. So that will help you. And you can attend job phase. And yeah, this is all which you can do. Any questions? So yeah, this is what was planned. Any questions from anyone? Do you guys have any questions? Any questions from anyone? I hope that I was able to provide you a overview of what DevOps is. We didn't go deeper into it, but yeah, if the overview of what does a DevOps do, what is DevOps, I think that idea is being provided. You can ask me any kind of doubts related to that. Okay, Jatin is asking, how do we start DevOps career as a fresher? So as a fresher, right, Jatin, firstly, main thing is you should know a bit of coding. Coding is something which is to be known. Whether that can be Python scripting, I think by learning Python will be very much helpful to you. Using Python, you can do a lot of scripting things. So basic thing would be firstly, understand what DevOps is, how that cultural shift, mindset shift comes in. And after that, you can learn about Linux. Okay, Linux thing is kind of like very much useful. Linux you will be using because servers and everything, right? So Linux would be used on a widely basis. On a daily basis, Linux would be like used for sure. And after that, you can learn about this version controls. What is Git? If you're starting as a new fresher, right, you should know what is a Git. How do you make use of Git? What are branches? How do you merge the changes? How do you handle the conflicts? You can read about these things. What are hooks? What are workflows in Git? So once you are familiar with all of these things, right, you can learn bit of Python over your Python, in the sense like firstly and learn the basics. How do you like interpret handle the files over here? How do you handle regular expressions? What is the syntax? What are the functions? How do you function handling? How do you do oops concepts? What are the libraries available? How do you import the libraries? All of these things related to Python. And what are the libraries which you can make use of, like the OS library? If you are trying to do some sort of automation in Python, what libraries you should be making use of. And once you're familiar with this, try to create some simple project and push it to the GitHub. And over here, after that is done, you can come with the continuous integration part. That is, you can create a pipeline. And for creating the pipeline, there are a lot of tools available. Example, Jenkins, Travis CI, Circle CI. So each of these tools comes with its own advantages. And you can choose one of that and set up a CI pipeline. Once that pipeline is being set up, you can in like this is a sample thing which you can do, because after joining any core, you would be doing the similar kind of things. Over here, you can create a testing environment. You can implement some sort of notification, whether the approval workflow got failed, whether the approval workflow got successful, whether the test got failed, the test got successful, the promotion is happening, but the promotion is blocking. These kind of notification and reporting mechanism can be set up, and you can learn about what are the best practices for setting up a CI pipeline. Once that is done, you can look into like Jenkins and all of those. What are the testing in platforms over here? How do you test the things? What is load testing? What is stress testing? What is unit testing? What is integration testing? Because testing is something which will be very much useful. What is security testing? What is 45 scanner? And all of this. And what are the best practices to have like in the CI/CD pipeline? How do you call a pipeline as a CI/CD or a full CD pipeline? And then comes a deployment part. Like how do you ensure that your changes gets deployed to the production in a safe manner? So that is something which you should be looking into. So after that is done, you can look into the configuration management tools such as Ansible, Puppet, Chef. And similarly, once this is done, right, you can look into the Docker and Kubernetes. Docker is mainly for containerization. That is, you want your changes to be created as a Docker file and publish it in a repository and create a kind of local image of your hardware, and that to be deployed that same image to be deployed on your host. So if there is any sort of requirement, you can learn about Docker and application monitoring. This is like very simple. You can look into Prometheus and Grafana. What is the use of that? How do you learn from your like integrate Prometheus in your application? How do you integrate Grafana with Prometheus? How do you create those dashboards? That would be like easy. And then comes the logging part. Key logs are very much essential. If you are able to like put your logs at a centralized place, if you are able to connect them to Kibana, and you are able to do that data analysis, that will be really helpful. And once you are done with all of this, then comes the cloud computing basics. Over here, you can learn what is AWS. I think in AWS, you can get started with a free trial. That would be for 1 year. If you're learning, right, for 1 year, you will be getting a free trial, and those resources comes with a limit. You can check about the pricing model over there. For free tier, you can use that for learning purposes, and then deploy sample application in your cloud. So yeah, that is what you can do. Is it clear, Jatin? Okay. Sanjeet says that English is not advanced. English required in DevOps. I think if you are able to communicate properly and you are able to explain out the things, because it is more of the communication part, right? English आना advanced, that is not necessary. जरूरी नहीं है कि एकदम से advanced, एकदम से posh English बोलने लग जाओ. अगर आप आपका idea clearly समझा पा रहे हैं, whatever thoughts are there in your mind, if you are able to explain them clearly, that is more than enough. ऐसे नहीं कि एकदम से posh English बात करनी है, बहुत जबरदस्त ग्रामर यूज करना है, नॉट नेसेसरी. इफ यू आर एबल टू कन्वे योर थॉट, to the people, that should be enough. Did I answer your query, Sanjit? And yeah, Jatin is asking one more thing. Most companies are asking at least 1 year of experience, and few are hiring a freshers, training, or the DevOps. Okay, so you can create your portfolio in such a way, Jatin. You can create some sample projects. So if you are able to put that value, this is something which I'm able to do because it is all about interest. If they are asking for a 1 year fresher, right? Can you get that similar kind of experience from your end? If you are very much interested to join as a DevOps, show that interest and get your project live. Okay, whatever personal project you have done so far, you can get it to live, and with that you can put it in your resume. So that will help you, Jatin. It's all about like putting the relevant keywords and showcasing your skills. I mentioned that thing, right? How do you showcase your skills? So if you are able to showcase those skills properly in your resume, your chances of getting an interview call would be increasing. Cool. Any other doubts from anyone? Okay. If no other doubts, we will just wrap up our session. What are the key takeaways for you from this webinar? First thing is you should know that DevOps is not set of tools or something. It is just a change in the mindset. It is a cultural shift which mainly emphasizes on collaboration. That is, we are mainly focused on the collaborative thing, automation, and continuous delivery. And if we see, the demand is kind of skyrocketing because the benefits which DevOps provides to the org is insane. So the demand is getting increasing, and you should be always learning. Have that learning mindset. Try to learn through books or mentorship programs or some sort of online communities and all of this. And once you are continuously learning this, you can prepare for your interviews. How can you prepare? You can prepare by the like what are the kind of commonly asked questions, what are the behavioral questions being asked, what are the scenario based questions being asked, and what kind of projects did you work, what is the complexity involved in that, and all of those. And yeah, after that, main thing is we should embrace a mindset of collaboration, continuous improvement, and that's how it would be helpful for us. Yeah, so wrapping up this session, thanks all for joining. If you have any further doubts, please feel free to ask. If not, I guess we can close the session. Is anyone else having any sort of doubts? We have 12 people on the call. Anyone having any other doubts? Awesome. Glad I was helpful to you. And I have also put this feedback doc link over here, requesting you folks to provide your feedback on like how could this be better. Okay. Thanks all for joining. Have a happy weekend. Bye-bye.